Trade and trade policies have been adversely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, which shocked the world in March 2020, and this has adversely played on trade dynamics on the African continent. The African Continental Free Trade Area, which is the flagship trade vision of the continent, effectively took off on the 1st of January 2021. This vision is seen as key to unlocking development and boosting trade across the African continent. In this edition of the program, we shall be looking at how the African Continental Free Trade Area can thrive in the face of daunting challenges. My guest is a senior trade policy advisor as well as a graduate of the Trade Law School from South Africa. For over 10 years now, he has been specialized in providing services to national and international bodies or as far as trade policies are concerned. And with him, we shall be looking at how the African Continental Free Trade Area can thrive and benefit the population of Africa, seen as key to unlocking the development and trade potentials of the continent. He is none other than Mr. BANA Etienne Cham. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you.
It's a shared pleasure, Peter.
Of course, like we mentioned, trade dynamics has been greatly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Definitely.
But just tell us, how adversely has this been?
Thank you, Peter. And I want to also send out greetings to our viewers who are taking off this important time to follow up the developments on trade policy issues across the continent. It is a very important aspect to look at the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area from 2018 to the outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020. Actually, a lot of programs at the level of the negotiating forum of the African Continental Free Trade Area were halted. First, due to limitations in movement. I remember with the outbreak of COVID-19, there were border closures. People could not move. Negotiations were ongoing on phase 1 and phase 2 of the African Continental Free Trade Area. On phase 1, we are talking here about trading goods and trading services. And phase 2 was taking into consideration other issues like investment, competition policy, and intellectual property. So with the outbreak of the pandemic, negotiations started in presence, in person, and everything had to halt. Now time to reflect on which dynamic to adapt in order to fit in within the context and meet up the deadline. I can assure you the deadline have never been met due to the pandemic. This is really a serious challenge. Everything was earmarked for 1st of July 2020 for trade to effectively kick off. It was shifted to January 2021 and again to July 2021. So you see the impact of COVID-19 setting in. People had to go to negotiate virtually. This is not part of our daily life, especially when trade negotiations is concerned.
Exactly, but how challenging were these virtual trade negotiations?
Well, they only had to adapt. There was no way out. The negotiating forum was shifted to a virtual platform, and on critical issues, a limited number of persons were admitted to meet and discuss on key issues, notably the rules of origin and the tariff concessions, which were the outstanding issues as far as trading goods is concerned. So the impact of COVID-19 has been both on technical issues and as well as the administrative issues, because everything halted down consultations of stakeholders at the regional economic community level, work with development partners like the GIZ, the European Union, and the United Nations Economic Commission of Africa. Everything had to be rethink, and that's why today, even at the level of development partners, fiscal movements are limited, and you see the proliferation of virtual meetings, which again is not part of our attitude, because at times you see a virtual meeting, which if it was in person, it could mobilize up to 300 participants, but online you see people who are mostly using their handsets. There are times they are receiving calls. So these are a lot of challenges that the negotiating process has encountered, thereby slowing down the entire unleashing of the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Now, how will you assess the level of implementation so far?
It is important to say here that trade on the legal terms started on the 1st of January 2021. But technically, that was impossible. And that is why on the 1st of January, there was a symbolic movement of goods across borders from Eswatini to Addis Ababa. And on the 5th of January, Ghana flagged off some consignment to Guinea-Conakry and South Africa, like to demonstrate the engagement and commitment of the state parties of the African Continental Free Trade Area to the entire process of the African economic integration. Till today, no major movement of goods have taken place. Why? Because there are two outstanding issues that, if not resolved, goods cannot move. We are here talking about the rules of origin and the tariff concessions. What are tariff concessions? There is a tariff booked at the level of each custom. When you bring your goods at the border, the reference the custom is having is that tariff book. So that book is supposed to be available, and there is a domestic process that still needs to be undergone for that book to be handed over to the customs department. That is the finance law. It needs to be published in that law so that customs now can incorporate it in their work. And when you bring your goods imported from any other African country, which is a state party to the aid agreement, now the custom will have to tell you, okay, I have a tariff book of the AFCFTA, and will now refer your goods to that tariff book and be able to tell you that this goods you're bringing, for example, from South Africa, is eligible for zero tariff. Means you don't pay your custom duties. Without that book, no goods can cross the border. You might be tempted to ask me, how then was it done with South Africa and Ghana?
Exactly. I wanted to come back to
there were special measures.
In those goods.
There were what we can call accelerated measures that were taken by the South African Parliament to incorporate the AFCFTA tariff books into their national legislation. And then customs were able on the 1st of January. And that's why the choice of South Africa was not an anonymous choice. It was a choice well analyzed and, in fact, agreed upon, because that is one of the countries that until today is ready to trade with their tariff book available at the borders.
But now, when you meet stakeholders, particularly representatives from various governments, what reasons are they giving you as far as the delay in the production of this tariff book is concerned? It's
a matter of the negotiating forum in Accra, the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area. There are technical issues. Negotiating on tariff concessions is something that requires in-depth knowledge on custom procedures. And the impact, liberalizing tariff is not something that can be done overnight, because the impact on the domestic economy is huge.
Exactly.
Remember,
states will need money.
You are giving you are giving off money to import goods free. So they should be very careful, not only about money, but the impact of liberalizing trade on a certain proportion of the population can be devastating. Take, for example, if we are liberalizing agricultural products and we are able to import watermelon for 100 francs, when watermelon at Marshall Sandaga is sold for 1,000. Do you imagine the impact on those producers? Take the case of tomato with the outbreak of COVID-19. In the market, I did an observation. In the market, the basket was sold for 2,500. Whereas during production, they were anticipating on 7,500 francs CFA. You can imagine the consequences. Loans they have taken from banks, workers they have to pay, transportation, storage of their goods. So we don't just liberalize tariffs like that. It is something that needs high technicity and care and broad-based consultations. So that is why these two outstanding issues are still. And rules of origin, if we are not careful, there will be transshipment from non-state parties of the African Continental Free Trade Area. For example, you can import something from China through Nigeria and bring it to Cameroon if the rules of origin are not well defined. These two aspects are the very essence of a free trade area. That is why it is taking a lot of time. And especially on issues like textile. Remember, you can put on a suit which is produced by 7 different countries. How then do you qualify the goods to be eligible from one of the state parties? That's the problem. Buttons might come from Pakistan, the textile from China, the thread maybe from India. And then now you come and assemble in Ghana and tell Cameroon that it is made in Ghana. No. These are the issues that need to be addressed.
So how do you solve the issue of the rules of origin to ensure that the goods that are coming from a country are exactly where it is coming from?
There are technical issues that have been put in place. Local content, the percentage of that goods which is made up of a local raw material or an intermediate material determines the eligibility of that product into a free trade area. Let's take the case, for example, of a car, because that is something that will be negotiated. Basically, only South Africa is, I can say, assembling cars. Now we have Ghana, we have Rwanda, we have Nigeria. A bulk of this raw material is coming from outside the continent. How then will the AFCFTA decide to elect a car under free trade? They might go, for example, for components like battery, where we have copper on the continent, leather chairs, where we have skin on the continent. They can even go for other aspects that we believe can be generated on the continent and say, okay, if we have 20% of a car, that car can be considered eligible for trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area. This is just a hypothetical case to demonstrate the complexity of rules of origin. And then now, when the goods is leaving that country which claims ownership of the goods, there is what we call a certificate of origin that is supposed to be issued. It depends on each country. Some countries will give it to the Chamber of Commerce to issue the certificate of origin, which must be justified by the different invoices of the raw material purchase or the intermediate material purchase, compiled and handed into the authority, which can do verification on the ground. If you bring an invoice with a letterhead from X, they are able to go to X and verify. Because it's all about the credibility of the country vis-a-vis the trading partner. And now they issue what they call a certificate of origin, with the name and stamp of a particular custom officer that has been submitted to the Secretariat, which will now circulate to borders of all the state parties, indicating that if a good is leaving the port of Douala, for example, it should be Peter who has the mandate to stamp and sign the certificate of origin. Now, another debate arose from the negotiating forum on electronic certificate of origin. Let the custom be able to send this certificate electronically to the destination country to avoid manipulation in the hands of shippers who are tempted at times to manipulate these documents to suit their interests. So now, there are countries which are ready to go for electronic certificate of origin, wherein once you certify the good, you don't hand it to the person, you ship it directly. The person tells you, I'm shipping my good to Mauritius. You send the certificate, administration to administration, custom to custom, because we have a continental custom organization.
Yeah, now, this leads me to ask this question. Looking at the complexity of the rules of origin as well as the custom tariff book, one would like to ask, was the African Union not aware of these problems when they decided to set up the free trade area?
It is not unique to Africa. Those are issues. It's like a surgery. When you're going to the hospital, they start mobilizing a team. They need procedures to arrive at the operation proper. It's the same. When you look at the CPPT in Asia, bringing together American and other trading partners across the world, it has been taking a number of years. The AFCFTA negotiations started basically around 2017. 2018, the agreement was signed. 2021, the agreement goes into force. Look at the number of state parties. This is the largest free trade area in terms of participating countries in the whole world. And they are able to come to a compromise within the shortest possible time. 44 countries signing up on the 21st of March 2018. And today we are talking about 37 state parties which are fully committed to the agreement. This is historic. A trade agreement is not achieved overnight. For example, we were talking about phase 1, phase 2 negotiations. Now we are talking about phase 3 negotiations, which will bring in women in trade protocol and e-commerce. COVID-19 has obligated state parties to think about e-commerce as a priority. So these are the issues that surround trade negotiations, because it has to do with sovereignty of states, giving out policy space to an organization, and trusting your domestic policy space to an organization which has to manage it. So there are a lot of things. Things arise with time. And you have to look at tariff concessions and rules of origin, not as a whole, but with specific content material. There are issues like sugar. You know the debate of sugar. A country can import sugar, package it, stamp it, made in country X, and send it to you.
Whereas it's not coming from
Whereas the sugar may be from Brazil, outside the free trade area. We need them to be able to analyze. It's not only unique to Africa. It's across the world. If there was a solution in Europe, Africa could have just copy and paste the solution. It's because each context is specific. Textile, for example, which I raise, you have wax. They will tell you Holland wax and this and that. Countries claim they're able to produce. Even the Ghanaian fabric today is produced in China. But once it touched down in Ghana, you cannot justify that it is not produced in Ghana. They have to analyze, and then we have porous borders. How do we manage this? And then there is the issue of transshipment, which we need to block, so that only state parties are able to make use of it. If we are not careful with rules of origin, we will not capture investment, which is one of the key aspects of the agreement, to capture direct and foreign direct investment. Because rules of origin will block outsiders from trading. So now they have to come in and invest in the country and use local content raw material to be able to produce eligible goods and sell within the free trade area. So those are some of the challenges. It's everywhere.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago that the Secretariat of the Continental Free Trade Area is already eyeing the phase 3. But before getting into that, you also mentioned that 37 countries have already signed. What, in your opinion, do you think attracted these countries to adhere fully into this vision?
A continental commitment. First, you have to look at, to negotiate a free trade area, you have to go back and look at yourself in the mirror. Like you as a government official, you have to look at the private sector and ask them the question, what do you want that will trigger massive production and investment? What are the obstacles to your production? Let me take the case of Cameroon. Consultations were done with GCAM, with Chamber of Commerce, with GFAC. These are industrial organizations in the country. They are able to tell you, these are our targets. Now Cameroon will say, okay, since the business people, because government does not do business, we have to be clear about that. Yeah. Government negotiate for the interest of its private sector, which is today a key driver of the economy. What do you need? There is an argument that is being negotiated at the level of the continent. What do you think about it? Now they will sit down. They do the analysis among themselves, consultations, and give in a position to government, telling them that we are okay for this. And now government sit down with other administrations like the Customs Department, the Agency for Standard and Quality, the Ministry of Economy, and do the analysis. What is the impact of what the private sector is telling us on the state budget? Now they sit in, they look at statistics, and they are able to take a decision. It's a sovereign decision taken by each country, but then there must be an economic interest behind. We are all aware of what happened in Nigeria. 2 days to the meeting in Kigali, the Nigerian private sector rose up and told the president, if you sign the agreement, we are going to the streets. And we are talking about an industrial association with more than 250,000 workers.
How impactful was that, or let's say how dangerous was that threat to the continental free trade?
Oh, you have to put it within the context in Nigeria. Elections were upcoming, and no politician will jeopardize with the industrial association of his country. They put across a point, a valid point, that these negotiations has been going on without consultations with the private sector. Remember, immediately that was done, the Nigerian government retracted from participating in the process and then embarked on domestic consultations. Nigeria was divided into zones, economic zones. And these economic zones had zonal heads who were supposed to do some research work and hand into the government. And at the end today, Nigeria is one of the champions. Remember, even without signing, Nigeria was vying for the position of the Secretary General of the AFCFTA, which means retracting was not leaving the process. It was like consulting and coming in now with our private sector. And let me assure you, Nigeria today is one of the highest countries that is doing domestic preparation ahead of the unfolding of trade under the AFCFTA. New institutions are under creation to align their national administrative setup with this new engagement. Yeah. Competition authority, they are setting up, they are looking into mechanisms that can protect the Nigerian market from dumping arising from the African continental free trade area, like trade defense institutions, which were not in existence. There are consultations ongoing to set up these institutions. And that is one key aspect about country engaging in international treaties or conventions. When you engage, your institutional setting within the country must not remain the same. You need to adapt now to this context. The case of Cameroon as well. Today we are having imports across the world which are impacting on our domestic industry.
Particularly the economic partnership agreement.
We need institutions where producers can turn to and tell them, please, we need you to investigate the import of this particular product because it is killing the local production. Once they look at the causality effect of importing a particular product and then the moving out of the domestic market of a former local producer, there is a problem. But those institutions are lacking in most of these African countries. And there is a call for concern. The governments need to set up these institutions. We need trade defense institutions. We even need international trade administration commissions. As of today, only about 3 African countries are having it.
And why are some of these countries not accelerating the policies that are needed for the effective implementation of the African continental free trade area? Is it lack of will or administrative drawback?
Well, what I can say is that take out the committees, the national committees of the African continental free trade area. When you look at the case of Nigeria, it is placed at the level of the presidency. The case of Ghana, placed at the level of the presidency. This tells you how the government considers the liberalization process. At the summit, which means any decision, there is immediate reaction because the highest personality is informed.
And a high-level engagement as well.
At the level of Cameroon, the committee is headed by the Minister of Trade. So you now have to think from the Minister of Trade to the presidency. What are the steps that are supposed, maybe a decision is supposed to move to be able to get the feedback. So while we are moving documents from one administration to the other to get to the presidency, in Nigeria and Ghana, it is coming directly to the peaks of the presidency. So these are some of the issues. And it tells you how a country is engaging in the process and at which level of ambition they rate the process. And that is why you see creation of new organizations to be able to make the best out of the AFCFTA in countries where it is at the presidential level a speedy process. Now,
when you look at the implementation or the process which some of these countries have covered so far, one is tempted to look at the impact or the contribution of the regional economic communities. How helpful or how harmful can they be to the African continental free trade area?
No, you have to look at the AFCFTA from the REC perspective. Remember, though we are talking about sovereignty, the REC is not sovereign, but we have sovereign states. Negotiations are done by the RECs. At the level of AFCFTA, they are seen but ECAs. They are not seen but Cameroon. Yes. Because what you have to understand is that Cameroon is not negotiating with Congo. Cameroon is not negotiating with Chad under the AFCFTA. No. It is a presumption at the level of negotiation that each country, each regional economic community, has achieved a certain level of integration where they have a free trade area, a custom union, and a free movement of people. If you are not up to that level, we presume. That considered, now the RECs have to negotiate because they wanted to put the RECs at equal level. Because studies have shown that the RECs are not at equal level. We have ECOWAS, for example, which enjoy free circulation. But here at our level, each time we get up in the morning, if you're going to Equatorial Guinea, you're not sure to arrive. You can go at the border is blocked. Gabon, same. So these are some of the challenges which the AFCFTA did not want to go into. What the Frenchman would call la cuisine interne. They didn't want to go into that. They said, okay, from the Abuja Treaty in the early 90s, we agreed that by this level of time, each regional economic community must have achieved a certain level of integration. So we have to move from there. We don't want to enter into your own internal issues. So from there, they picked up. So it is actually the RECs that are engaging in the process. So, but there are some difficulties which the negotiating forum did not consider. The duplicity of institutions at the regional economic community level. Let me take the case of the Economic Community for Central African State. We have CEMAC, we have ECAS. CEMAC is more advanced than ECAS. And it is ECAS that is negotiating. CEMAC is a custom union. ECAS is not. At the level of Southern Africa, SACU, Southern Africa Custom Union, which is made up of South Africa, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, they are Namibia, they are a custom union. Since 1910, the oldest custom union in the world. But SADC is not a custom union, not even an entirely free trade area, which is a similar case with ECAS. How then do you reconcile this? And at the level of CEMAC, they tell you we have a monetary union, we have the same currency. At the level of ECAS, that's not the case.
That's not the case.
At the level of CEMAC, we have the blue number plate. At the level of ECAS, that's not the problem. But at the lower level of ECOWAS, again, you come, they will tell you we have UMOA, we have ECOWAS. These are some of the challenges that we are facing in terms of implementing. Because when we talk about a custom union, they are negotiating as a bloc. Now, the African Union is asking regional economic communities like ECAS to negotiate at a bloc. But when you come back in terms of tariff liberalization and rules of origin, CEMAC will need to negotiate first as a custom union, carry their position to ECAS, and then ECAS will carry the position to the negotiating forum of the African Continental Free Trade Area. These are technical issues which today are delaying the implementation because, like it or not, they exist. Thank God at the level of ECAS, we are talking about harmonization of institutions at the level of ECAS. We hope that the process will be accelerated in order to achieve a unique regional economic community. And that is why some member states of the regional economic community are tempted to find themselves in different regional economic communities. Take the case of DRC, which is CEMAC, COMESA, SADC, and now going into EAC. 4 regional economic communities. These are 4 different legislations. How do you reconcile that? But you cannot stop it. It's a sovereign nation. They have the full right to do that. How do you reconcile? And then the AFCFTA came now to superpose all this juxtaposition, what economists will call the spaghetti bowl effect of a country belonging to different regional economic communities. So the AFCFTA now comes to set in above and suppress this issue of belonging to different regional economic communities and provide a unique legal framework for the entire continent. So these are some of the problems that the RECs have been facing now. Whereas when they were conceiving the AFCFTA, they were not looking at things from this perspective. I can assure you, touch any trade expert on the continent, this is the process, this is the most complex issue to address.
Now, for a country like the DRC, which you just mentioned, is one of the countries with high potentials for the continent, belonging to close to 4 regional economic communities or custom blocks, if we can say so. Are there any setbacks that can be derived from such a move by the Democratic Republic of Congo? Or are there advantages which may outweigh some of the difficulties that President Felix Tshisekedi may find on his way?
I will tell you, it's a decision of both sides of the same coin. Going into 4 regional economic communities will mean you have to make 4 contributions annually. And definitely you will not contribute where your interest is not well protected. You're engaging into 4 different legal frameworks, which might at times conflict each other. How do you implement that? How do you implement that? At one level, there should be free circulation. At the other is the custom union. At the other, so these are complex issues. But then it is for the interest of the businesses in DR Congo, because to them it's a wider market. Remember, before the AFCFTA, there was the Tripartite Free Trade Area, which comprised of SADC, COMESA, and EAC.
Yes.
And DR Congo belongs to all of this. So to them, it's a wider market that's opening up for their businesses. And to them, it's all about geopolitics as well. When you look at DR Congo, in terms of import and export, their trade is being done a lot with East African ports. Port of Dar es Salaam, Port of Lamu, Port of Mombasa. Namibia port, Johannesburg, they are trading a lot with these countries. So to them, it's all about geopolitics, economic interests, and again, deriving a larger market for businesses in DRC. So now you come back to look at the fallbacks. They are making huge gains. They are able to, maybe in terms of maybe diplomacy, when they want a position at the level of African Union, they can easily lobby in their forex and get it. But now, what are the implications? If you have full legislation before your courts, there is a problem. We like it or not, there must be conflict of interest at one moment. How do you implement that?
Now, this brings to question the visa openness policies of countries. So far, you just mentioned moments back that it is more easy in the ECOWAS zone for the movement of persons and goods to be effective, whereas you have another block like the CEMAC block or ECAS where you have borders that are closed here and there. And from the 2020 Visa Openness Index, it states that just 54% of countries in Africa can be accessed either free or using a visa on arrival. Now, what can be done for such process to speed up and, in fact, impact positively the African Continental Free Trade Area?
Yeah, before diving into that, we go back to the 21st of March 2018. Alongside the African Continental Free Trade Area, there was the Protocol on Free Movement, the right of entry, the right of establishment, and the right to stay. That protocol is under signature. Because it is understandable, if people are not moving, there is no business. There is the African passport, which has already gone operational, and now they've asked member states to define the conditions of eligibility in their respective states. Now, coming back to the 54%, where were we before arriving at 54%? That's an important question to ask. There has been a lot of progress since 2010 in terms of the Visa Openness Index rating. There's been a lot of progress. Let me take, for example, in 2015, I could not go to Kenya. Even with a service passport, I couldn't go to Kenya. But today, I don't need anything like a visa. To Tanzania, I don't even need a visa. I don't need a visa. I bought my flight, I go to Tanzania, and the stamp, just a stamp, entry and exit. A lot of progress has been done, but we cannot deny the fact that there are challenges on the ground. Security issues, cross-border data sharing. That is an important fact. Are you able to give me information about a criminal who leaves my country and moves into your country?
And which can potentially threaten the security of that country.
That is it. For example, just of recent, we've been hearing attempted coup d'etats in country of nationals coming from different countries.
We have a clear case now, Sunday Igboho, which is being held in Benin.
So those are some of the issues.
Dragging on.
But yeah, so those are some of the issues that must be addressed before we talk about free movement. Even in Europe, there are still frictions. We saw under Sarkozy how he was picking up the Rome citizens from settlement camps to send them back to Romania. These are members of the same regional bloc. So the process of free movement, respecting the free movement protocol is on course. But then there are realities. We have seen attacks in South Africa on other fellow Africans. There is free movement. Okay, yes. But now there are domestic challenges which must be addressed. And unemployment of youth. But rest assured, the baseline is there has been progress. That 54% is coming basically from around 10 or 15%. Even Ethiopia, you had to get a visa before entering Ethiopia without an embassy in the country. How do you do? You need to move from here maybe to Nigeria where there's an Ethiopian embassy. Get a visa, come back. Do you imagine the cost? So we are 54% today and definitely a lot is going on. We have to recognize the challenges on the ground, security, data sharing. All this information is very important. But there are things that they will be addressed. That's why it started at a lot of the regional economic community, at a lot of ECOWAS, as we highlighted, EAC. These are realities. SADC, these are realities. People move across borders just with their national identity card. As simple as that. They bought flights without even a passport. A Malian going to Ghana does not need a passport.
Does not need a passport.
Yeah. He bought a flight with his national ID card. His boarding pass indicates Ghana, he is free. So it's a process, and definitely we are going to achieve it. A lot has been done for the past years. That's why we are at 54% today. Other countries are announcing, just for the past few years, Benin and Sierra Leone and Rwanda, they announced free movement for all Africans. They did not wait for the protocol ratification, but they have unilaterally declared that all Africans are eligible to come to their country. And that's acceptable today. Even despite COVID, they have not blocked borders. It is still going on. So there is progress, and we're hopefully going to move and reach a certain level. We have to consider the uniqueness of Africa. There is a lot of complex issues. We have Boko Haram, we have the Al-Shabaabs, we have the Al-Qaeda. So those are things that we cannot deny. And the movement is basically economic. And once you move into a country, you start transforming resources that were not considered by citizens of that country. We like it or not, there will be some friction between you and those citizens. So there should be domestic arrangements before engaging in international conventions. We are fortunate in Cameroon. Wherever you come, you feel at home in Cameroon. How many countries can offer such a paradise on earth? Very rare.
Very rare. Now, when they talk about the African Continental Free Trade Area, one gets the impression that it's a vision for sub-Saharan Africa. How can you assess the implication of the North African countries, particularly with their identity of being Arab countries? How does that play on the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area?
Yeah. When you look at the signature and the ratification process, the Arab region has been very active. Remember, Egypt was the first country to declare, my borders are 100% open for he or she who gives me 100% access equally. Is that not telling a lot? Egypt today wants to get into COMESA. They're a member of COMESA. Morocco wants to get into ECOWAS. This is telling you. When you look at their investments across the continent, in the banking sector, the cement production, we cannot do without each other. We are condemned to live together. They are Africans. Even if their race is telling them they are Arabs in the Middle East, they are Africans. Geographically, they are Africans. And I think they are doing that because these are regions which have, in terms of embassies across the continent, they have one of the highest rates of presence across African countries. And at the low of the African Continental Free Trade Area, even before the African Continental Free Trade Area, we started seeing the massive presence of Moroccan banks, Egyptian investments. We had Arab contractors in Cameroon. In order to protect these investments and make the best out of it, the AfCFTA becomes the right platform for them. So I don't think they will drag feet. Look at the ratification ratio. Basically, all of them are in. And I think that was on the 2 weeks or so, I was participating in a webinar in Tunisia under the African Continental Free Trade Area. The private sector there is mobilizing day in, day out. They're asking questions to their government. How do we make the best out of this argument? They are eager. Businesses in Tunisia, they are eager. And compared to us, they are well placed because they produce massively. And we don't have problem with consumption habits. If they tell you this is an apple from Morocco, you don't have any problem. We have basically the same culture. We have Muslims in Cameroon who can consume any halal food coming from Morocco. So it is of the interest of these North African countries to make the best. And technically, they are doing that.
Okay, now, the Secretary General of the Continental Free Trade Area, in a recent visit to Angola, announced that the program will create a Pan-African payment and settlement platform. Yeah. Of what advantage can that be to boosting trade under the AfCFTA?
The current situation is complex. as I'll put it. We have about 38 currencies on the continent, something also 38 to 48, I don't know. If you want to trade from CEMAC, where we have a single currency, to Zimbabwe, you have to make a recourse to the dollar before you go back to the Zimbabwean dollar. A Free Exim Bank carried out a study which revealed that Africans spent $5 billion each year to purchase the dollar and trade on the continent with each other. This is huge. How do we solve this problem? A Free Exim came in now as a partner to the process by developing the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS, which is a platform that will eliminate the recourse to foreign currency for Africans to trade among themselves. So with this platform, actually it is at the pilot phase level in West Africa and other selected African countries. With this platform, when you are selling to an Egyptian, that Egyptian will not need to send your money through the bank, which will go through the US bank partner to come back and pay you now in your local currency. No. When you're trading with an Egyptian, you receive your money in the local currency, guaranteed by the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. No more recourse to foreign currencies. That has been eliminated, and they will bear the cost of doing that. They are working with commercial banks in each country. They are opening up to commercial banks so that it should be accessible. They're using digital payment platforms. They're using electronic payments like the mobile money. They're using classic banks. I think they'll even move down to microfinance to integrate the contextual aspects of African financial
system.
So as simple as that, $5 billion gained. Trade among Africa facilitated and accelerated. Because imagine, when you have to trade maybe with an Egyptian, you are paying an Egyptian money, your bank will need to maybe get a routing from a US bank or a European bank to pay somebody on the same continent like you. Those are charges that are generated. All these charges were swept to the American economy. $5 billion is not $5 million in dollars. That's a considerable amount of money. So that's the essence of the Pan-African Payment System, which we call an operational instrument. There are 5 of them. You have the African Trade Observatory. You have the platform for rules of origin, the platform for tariff concessions, and you have the non-tariff barrier monitoring and elimination mechanisms. These are the 5 operational instruments through which the African Continental Free Trade Area will be materialized on the ground. Because it does not suffice to eliminate custom duties. Now, there are non-tariff barriers that set in. How do we do that? For Cameroon to ship goods to Nigeria, Nigeria will ask you a sanitary and phytosanitary certificate to attest that these goods will not be harmful to plant and animal life. It will not harm Nigerians, their health. So their government now needs a certificate. And this certificate, again, needs to go through a process. And once you go to Nigeria, to go to Egypt, you have to comply again to another set of standards. So the AFCFTA now seeks to harmonize and give the 55 member states of the African Union a unique legal framework for technical barriers to trade. So these are the issues we need to do. When you're moving a container from here to Central Africa, you meet controls on the way. This person comes in and this administration I'm controlling. The time you take, the cost, the amount of money you spend on the way, just the time. Maybe a container can move over a distance of, say, 800 kilometers. Will take 1.5 weeks. Whereas on the normal lane, that container could take 5 days.
5 days.
Do you imagine the cost? Who borne the cost? The final consumer.
Now, how can the proceeds from the AFCTA be shared when you look at the fact that the economic disparity on the continent is very glaring? How do we share the proceeds? It is said that, of course, 1.3 billion people with a mass gross domestic product of 2.3 trillion. Now, how will the proceeds be shared to various countries or various people?
Yeah. That's a critical problem, but I can assure you there are mechanisms put in place to mitigate the gap in terms of shared benefits. There is what they call the adjustment funds that has been put in place, still by the Afri-Exim Bank. This adjustment fund is money that has been put in place so that when the market is on leash, when you are able to justify that, due to the liberalization of trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area, this sector of your economy is being impacted. The Afri-Exim Bank will now come in, carry out a study with the industry, and be able to pump in money into that sector to readjust. And now, let me tell you, they are equally mechanisms. It is not because we are in a free trade area where countries lose their sovereignty. There are mechanisms where you have that power to limit importation of a particular good because of the causality effect to your domestic economy.
To protect your local industries.
So these are some of the issues that we have to put in mind. We cannot have the same benefits. You cannot compare Nigeria with 200 billion inhabitants with maybe a small country of less than 1 million inhabitants to have the same benefit from the African Continental Free Trade Area. First, it goes about what you produce. What are you offering to the market of 1.2 billion Africans? Are you doing what they call a specialization factor? Then you go into a particular good where you know you can do the best outperformance and be able to get rid of the market. There will be losers. I can assure you, practically there will be losers. There will be winners. But then we should understand that that is the process of integration. Losing is not like you lose everywhere. Take a country like Mauritius, which rely a lot on tourism. Freeing up the economy for visa, people will be able to move in there. And it will be a trigger-down effect. When tourists come, they buy handicraft. Who are those producing handicraft? The youth and the women.
Craftsmen. Of course, that leads me, you just mentioned women, and that really takes me down to...
These are sectors that, and when you free up the economy like that, the leisure sector start booming. And who are those mostly who are working in hotels? Young girls. When you go to front decks of hotels, you meet 5, 6 people, 4 or 3 will be women. Job opportunities for them. This is the services sector that is booming up.
So now, let me just automatically move on to that. How is the AFCTA leveraging the services of women to boost this program and, of course, provide the necessary prosperity for Africans?
Yeah, remember from the onset I told you about a women in trade protocol that is under discussion now. It will be put in place. It is under discussion because we realize that this was a flat trade agreement which did not take into consideration the specificity of women. What are the sectors in which women are thriving? The services sector, the tourism sector in particular. When you go to restaurants, you go to hotels, you go into this craft industry, you see a predominant proportion of women. When you go into agriculture, just take up the case, let me take the case of avocado. You go in front of 10 bakeries, you find women selling avocado, which means the agricultural sector is a sector that should not be negotiated with relative ease as you are negotiating other sectors like automobile, for example.
You must get the women involved.
You must get the women involved, and you must carry out detailed studies to tell you the impact of this liberalization on women. I was talking about the tourism sector, which is one of the key sectors that is also under negotiation on the free movement and other related aspects. Services sector. Now, when you look at this sector, women, the participation of women in the services sector like tourism is very high. And when you go now to negotiate this, how do you protect this industry for women who are there to continuously make a benefit out of this sector in order to make them feel that actually there is a trade agreement that has been put in place and we are feeling better than what we had yesterday? So it must be inclusive consultation process. It is very important. How is the consultation process being done? Visa deliverance. When a person wants to come to a country, he cannot have the visa, definitely he will back up and look for another country where he can easily move into. And we are still facing a high visa restriction procedure in Cameroon. We need to move into digital visa, e-visa. And again, allow people to be able to pick up visas at our borders. We have many people who want to come to the country, either to do business or participate in conferences or other international events. That option Especially today, just with a single phone number, you can be able to trace people. We need to incorporate all these aspects and be able to move into the digital era. Because we have women who will make the best out of this. We have our youth who are working tirelessly to be able to make ends meet. This is a sector that can provide them a lot. When tourists are coming, they need taxi services. They need to go to restaurants and eat. They need to visit areas. So all these things, they trigger down to tell you that young persons and women should be included in the process of trade liberalization.
And of course, other trade policies as well.
Yes, industrial policy, for example. Remember, we've been talking about the industrial master plan in Cameroon. How do we concretize this? We need to prioritize actions in Cameroon. When I was looking through the National Development Strategy 2020-2030, we cannot develop a country cutting across the entire economy. It doesn't work like that. The situation of Tanzania is revealing to us. In 2013, they prioritized 5 sectors: technology, education, agriculture, health, and infrastructure. They worked on that from 2013 to 2018. It's visible.
And they got the proceeds.
Today, they are an upper middle income economy. And that has been done just within a period of 5 years. So if we need to sit down again and relook the national development strategy and be able to say, okay, now for the past 10 years we've been developing infrastructure. Is the infrastructure operational? If it is operational, we now make a shift and prioritize 5 other sectors. In that way, we'll be moving gradually down to embrace everything and end up losing everything.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. BANA Etienne Cham.
Thank you, Peter.
It was a pleasure having you on the program.
It's a shared pleasure. And
to you, televiewers, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, we shall be with you. Keep watching Dash News.